down a ton of things, last minute lineup adjustments, ownership, injury news, everything. But first, Sal, what's going on, my man?
What's going on, Chris? It's pretty good. Yeah, like you said, we're 11 a.m. Saturday. What are we now, like 26 hours away from kickoff? I'm excited. So let's get last second things in terms of ownership or really any news that's going on. Thankfully, Antonio Brown's not on this slate, so it's not a ton that you have to break down. But yeah, let's get into it, man.
Man, you came out the gate hot with the AB. I guess we should get the elephant out of the room because this is an interesting topic real quick, especially for those who are either playing season long or doing the showdown come Monday, because obviously he's not on the main slate. But yeah, just from you, I mean, you have great football knowledge. What's your take and opinion on this AB situation?
I mean, in terms of just his situation, not yet kind of covering just what's going to happen with the fallout of players there for fantasy. His specific situation, I don't know. It's clearly in very far majority. A lot of the things, just his behavior is kind of bringing them on. But I'm always very wary when it comes to just media stories and things like that of what the other side might be, whether it's something like personally, mentally with him, or if it's just some things coming out that might be stretched a little bit further. So I think it seems to be the case when you have guys like Adam Schefter reporting on it, a lot of just issues going on with him. But I'm very much one to kind of just like wait in terms of all the hype and ragging on him, because who knows what's coming out. That video he released last night, I mean, you have aspects of it that, I mean, black and white, I don't want to dive into it, but it seems like other things are going on in Antonio Brown's life. So in terms of the Oakland Raiders, yeah, Tyrell Williams is going to be just somebody who just starts to shoot up now for DFS, either if it's the showdown slate or just season long. I like Hunter Renfrow a lot. The first time that they said he was going to be suspended in my deep season long league, I picked up Hunter Renfrow, was still available. A guy who's going to be in the slot and now just going to see way more targets, I would imagine.
Man, Hunter Renfrow, what a take right there. If you guys don't have him and he's in your waiver wire, that's not a bad take actually. He'll be in the slot. Definitely could be a nice little correlation with Derek Carr there. All right, guys, before we get into this, don't forget our sponsor, Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. They got a big tournament going on this weekend, all right? And there's no management fees. You get up to $30 in Yahoo Sports rewards points. All you got to do is just sign up at awesemo.com. It's that simple. And then also click on the Spotlight Hitters article. If you see that, that'll give you easy access to go ahead and sign up. Use the sign-up code AWESEMO. That's AWESEMO. You definitely don't want to miss out because this week they have the NFL $1 Million Baller, which is a $100K first place prize, zero management fee, okay? So that means there's no rake. They're not taking any money out of the tournament. There's also a $25K guaranteed contest, $1K to enter, it pays $4K to first. There's no multimedia entry either, okay, guys? So there's no better place right now, really, than to play NFL this year on Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. All right, so listen, Sal, you wrote a tweet this morning. You talked about Dalvin Cook. We kind of went over it in the show yesterday. The current updated projected ownership on Draftkings, Dalvin Cook, 6,000, 37%. And you wrote some interesting takes there, and I just want to kind of pick your brain, and I want you to kind of break down this whole Dalvin Cook situation. Is he a play, or is he an anti-optimizer play at this point?
Yeah, so I saw the show yesterday. It was fantastic. You and Manny did a really good job with that. So nice work there. But yeah, there's definitely pieces of it, like Manny was talking about, that are anti-optimizer. But just the ownership that's coming in right now, before any ownership was even released, in terms of just trying to kind of have tunnel vision on what's going on, not looking elsewhere, my own takes and still are, my opinions are, that there's other guys in his own price range that I like getting to more. And now here, like, let's unpack just the Dalvin Cook situation, him personally. So high ownership because he's going to get work. He's cheap in a very good matchup. And also there's probably an aspect of it. He was the only running back in the preseason that did anything in terms of having an 85-yard run. That's what people will remember. But you also have, and Atlanta was the fourth worst in terms of how many points they gave up to the running back position in terms of Draftkings last year. But you have the other teams in that range, the Bengals, the Chiefs. They were worse. And who's facing the Bengals? Who's facing the Chiefs this week? Leonard Fournette, similar price range. Chris Carson, similar price range. Carson's a huge favorite. Carson's going to get all the work out there. He separated himself from Penny in the widest of margins, and now he's also going to get pass catching work with no Mike Davis. And then Leonard Fournette is the only running back there in a game where they're not huge underdogs. They are slight underdogs, which isn't great, but not huge underdogs against a Chiefs team that gave up the third most fantasy points to that. So in terms of like the matchup being fantastic, it's also fantastic for those guys. And also something that's probably being a little bit underreported right now, the rookie running back Alexander Madison. He's a guy who they said they want as the season goes on to implement him into the late Latavius Murray role from last year, which seems like a concern. I don't think that all comes week one, but there's somewhat of a question mark there that's going undernoticed. I think people just naturally jump onto one player, and that's why that ownership is spiking, and they just remember that Atlanta was terrible last year. There were teams that were worse, not a lot, but a couple that were worse. So right now in that range, I think Leonard Fournette, in terms of just pure points, point per dollar even, Leonard Fournette stands out. Chris Carson, and I would even argue very close to Dalvin Cook is Kerryon Johnson in that range based on matchup and just based on the opportunity that those players are going to get. Now, I don't think Cook's a bad play. I mean, Cash, obviously a great option. But when you start to get to a tournament, regardless of ownership, I like those guys more. And now they're coming in at lower ownership. So I personally just hope Cook's ownership keeps rising because it's just going to make it better for the stance that I'm taking as of right now.
I mean, that's a great point. And I think another thing to point out, too, is Jacksonville doesn't have an established passing game like the Vikings do. Yeah. And they have two very good targets. I mean, two top 5 fantasy targets per se, if you really want to break it down, which does take away from Dalvin Cook in this situation, especially in a premier matchup for those guys. However, too, Gary Kubiak, he's the offensive coordinator. And I wanted to pull this up real quick because I thought it was very interesting. But in the last 5 years that he was a coach or a coordinator, 60% of the target share went to wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. 17% went to the tight end. Then 10% only went to the running back. Okay, so which is huge. We know Dalvin Cook, he can catch in the backfield. That's one thing I wanted to point out. Another thing is he's been more pass heavy, Gary Kubiak, in the late stages of his career coaching rather than early on. He used to be kind of 50-50 split. Now it's about 60-61%. He leans on the pass. And I think now, second year in, Cousins more comfortable, probably going to feel a little bit more relaxed in the pocket to be able to throw the ball more. This kind of makes it interesting. It makes me think maybe Dalvin Cook right now, because we don't know kind of how they're going to plan this scheme with Gary Kubiak. I kind of like fading Dalvin Cook in this situation and pivoting to, like you said, a Leonard Fournette, who there's no backfield there. He's going to get a majority of the carries. He is the running back of the team that he's going to get the ball handling, especially at the goal line. So I'm all on board with you there when it comes to the Dalvin Cook situation and pivoting to maybe say like a Leonard Fournette or a Chris Carson or even an Austin Eckler, who we'll probably get into here shortly.
Yeah, exactly. And then another thing that's going probably small sample size, don't know if I want to read into it too much, but it correlates with what Minnesota is saying in that they want to rely on the run, which is good news for Cook. But last year, the final quarter of the season, when they were kind of scheming differently with Cook being back, it was 28 pass attempts per game for Cousins. A lot of that wasn't game flow based. It was actually scheme based. So if that actually correlates with this offseason saying they want to run more, that's good news for Cook. But it's also going to mean, less pass attempts, which mean, like you just said, which is a really great stat. If 10 attempts per game or 10% are only going to the running back, that's even worse then because you're not even getting volume in that situation. A lot of people think that Cousins will throw 45 times a year. Again, maybe he does, but all the indications late last year, the preseason this year, are saying that they're going to kind of work him back a little bit more, rely on Cook, which is good. But Cook also had, smaller sample, 41% success rate last year. That's one of the worst on the slate, including all running backs, even backups, whatever it might be, that have the qualified stat numbers for it.
Absolutely. And let me ask you this, because I know you mentioned Leonard Fournette. How do you feel about pivoting to Chris Carson, even though both of these guys, Carson and Fournette, are kind of similar right now, 30% projected, and Fournette 19%. How do you feel about pivoting to also maybe say a Chris Carson saving an additional 300 in that same price range?
Yeah, I feel just as comfortable, if not more comfortable, because he's going to be, or at least indications by Vegas, he's going to be actually leading in this game. And he's going to be a 3-down back, goal line work. More pass attempts are coming his way. That's why he got hyped up in the preseason. They threw 25% of the time to the running back last year, just since they didn't throw a lot at all in Seattle. And they want to throw more now. So there's upside there in the first half. And then in the second half, if they are leading, I imagine that he continues to get work. He had a 51% success rate, which was a little bit above average for this slate last year. Chris Carson for cheaper even, I like personally more, even if we factor out ownership, than Dalvin Cook.
Yeah, I agree. This matchup for Carson, with Mike Davis gone now, and I feel like Penny is not that guy that's going to be able to get in the way right now of the running game for Chris Carson. Going to be interesting up there this weekend to see. Cincinnati gave up the most points to running back position last year, DraftKings fantasy points. And it's going to be cold there. It's going to be in the 60s, rain. So this could be one of those ground and pound games. It's going to be very interesting. Another guy I want to talk about. He's 27% now. I mean, obviously, we know how good he is. CMC, Christian McCaffrey, running back of the Panthers, 8,800 on DraftKings. And I just want to ask you, when it comes to him or maybe like a Saquon Barkley, or maybe who I like the most right now, Zeke Elliott, and we'll get into that in a minute, Christian McCaffrey, 8,800. Just want to see your take on, is this appropriate to have, as much as the field, or where do you go in this scenario with McCaffrey at 8,800? Is he worth paying up for in this matchup against the Rams at home?
Yeah, it's a great question. Personally, I won't be paying up for that. I love that you said Ezekiel Elliott. That's a situation that if I'm paying up, Zeke and Barkley are the two that I'm probably getting to the most on this slate. I don't think you have to with all the value that we have. But yeah, McCaffrey actually has a pretty good matchup. The Rams got a little bit weaker. No Ndamukong Suh on that line. They brought in dusty old Clay Matthews, who will play on the outside, and inside linebacker, who has lost plenty of steps, former Green Bay Packers. So McCaffrey's in between the tackles is fine, but where he makes all his money in terms of DraftKings PPR is in the catching game, receiving game. So there's still upside with McCaffrey. It's just you want to pay top end. And if you are, I personally would rather go with the guys who don't have question marks around their goal line work, in Saquon Barkley, in Ezekiel Elliott, especially Zeke probably going to be in the red zone. I don't buy the 20 to 25 rep count that they're talking about there. So Saquon, there's concerns if you're paying up in terms of does he even get into the red zone with how low that total is there. But it's not, I mean, you have McCaffrey who's not in a situation where he has like a 28 total. So personally, I will be rather getting to Barkley and to Elliott if I do pay up. There's just concerns over goal line work. And those same players in Zeke and Saquon have the same upside in the receiving game and just overall on the ground.
I love that. And Ezekiel Elliott, first off, Christian McCaffrey, I think more of a cash game play this week, in my opinion. But definitely you can roll him out in tournaments. I don't think there's anything wrong. I think I'm on board with you paying 8,800. I'd rather go to someone like Ezekiel Elliott, which in my opinion, I think might be the guy that helps someone take down a millionaire maker this weekend. 3% projected ownership. And I think I'm on board with you about the reps. I'm not buying it. This is a divisional matchup game. It's the first game of the season. I think you want to set the tone. And let me tell you one thing real quick, because I don't think people realize this. I don't think that they give Zeke the money if he's out of shape, if he's not ready to play in a game. I think he's been busting his ass. I think he's in great shape. And I think that he's going to come out firing. And I think he's going to eat in this matchup against the Cowboys. Against the Giants. How do you feel about this?
Oh, I completely agree. And like I was saying the exact same things. They pay him. There's tapes of him working out with like Marshall Faulk, Emmitt Smith in Cabo. He had the playbook out there like the whole time. They translated it to him for the 2-minute offense. He flew people out there to actually run 7-on-7, but not even any of that. Like in terms of us actually trying to like predict, yeah, we think he's going to play, which all indications lead to him playing more than these reps. Kellen Moore actually said, I believe this is a tweet from the 5th. Beat writer says, so Kellen Moore just says he expects Zeke to be fully available. He seems like he's in really good shape. We'll see how it goes, though. If there's any reasons to give him rest, we will. We feel comfortable with Tony, as in Tony Pollard. So I think the 20 to 25 reps, wherever the report came from, just is sort of something that got taken out of context as we'll see how it goes. If he's in shape, which it seems like he is, they're just going to let him do as much as he wants. And for people that say, oh, they don't need Zeke against the Giants to win, but it's not like he's nursing an injury. It's not like you're putting any risk on him out there if he's in shape. In terms of that take, then Russell Wilson shouldn't play against the Bengals this week. So, yeah, I have all the faith in the world in Zeke. And right now I'm not getting to a whole bunch. I'm getting to more than the field because it's easy to. But if that ownership doesn't come up, then I'm going to start getting to a lot. I want to see what the most updated looks like and see if we see anything more. Because, 3% is just criminal right now.
Yeah, currently right now, 3%. I love it. I definitely, if this stays the same, probably would be over the field. Dallas, 7.5-point favorite right now, 26.75 team total, which currently is the second highest on this slate. The Giants gave up 27.9 points to the running back last year, DraftKings points per game, and 24.1 on Fanduel. So interesting matchup. And I want to stay in this game real quick because there's a couple other options here that I've seen being talked about the last 2 days. And one of them specifically is Michael Gallup. Michael Gallup, wide receiver for the Cowboys. I want to talk to you about this real quick, Sal. Have you kind of dived into this matchup and do you have him in any rosters currently?
So currently right now I don't have Michael Gallup in just any of my rosters. With Amari Cooper seeming like a full go, there was interest before then, but honestly, not even that much interest before because I don't think Cooper or Gallup can kind of take the reins as a number one, at least not yet. He's looked fine in limited preseason action. There's ravings about him in camp. There were last year as well. So for me right now in this price range, I just need to see more before I actually get there. Last year, terrible catch percentage of 48.53. That's bottom 5 on the slate. Part of that is due to Dak. Part of that is due just to route running. So I know the whole air yards thing about Michael Gallup, people get all worked up about, but I have to just see it first. He's probably going to be the third target on this team now that Zeke and Amari are back. So for me, his stock dropped once the news came in that the two best offensive weapons that were taking over the far majority of the target share in that offense the second half of last year are back. The price tag is obviously great. The matchup against the Giants is fine. The total is fine, but I'm probably, if I'm getting to this game, in terms of stacking it, because when I kind of want to talk about it for GPPs, stacking-wise, it's going to be, and I have interest here, especially as like a hammer game if you want that edge to it as well. Dak, Amari, and Zeke, a couple times last year, a winning combination. As a decent-sized favorite, you imagine if you game scripted properly that Amari can get going early, Zeke should be able to eat in the second half if we truly believe he'll be out there. So Cooper's price point is completely fine, definitely a GPP only play. I'm just personally not getting into it right now because what last year showed you that you would want to get to that over Amari. Dak was keyed in on Amari if he wasn't dumping it off to Zeke.
Absolutely. The reason why I ask is because, I mean, they do have a 26.75 total, so points got to come from somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
And the thing is, too, is it's weird because Gallup and Cooper, they're similarly projected ownership right now, 5% and 7% respectively. So, but you mentioned something great because this could be a stack that does go off, and this could be a stack correlation with Prescott at the quarterback position. I mean, that could help you take down a GBP. So I'm definitely on board with you there. Another guy I want to talk about that this guy has shot up. He's now even shot up in the most recent projected ownership. And it's because of week 3 of the preseason with Nick Foles. Dede Westbrook, 4,800 on DK. He's at 24% projected ownership now. I don't know if this is a price situation because he's, very affordably priced, or is it because that week 3 in preseason where he went off for all those target shares?
Yeah, it's definitely partially priced, but if we had ownership that early, there's no way this guy would have been that high. He had, 7 out of 10 targets. There was a couple of pass attempts that were called back as a penalty. So 10 targets, it's 70% of that game. I mean, obviously small sample, caught a touchdown. He's shooting up because of that. He's shooting up because he's cheap. But honestly, that ownership is now getting to a point where you have to start to question it. But compared to guys like Cook at the running back position, I actually buy into and find, which is interesting because it's a wide receiver in terms of feeling comfortable about eating chalk. But I'm fine with Dede Westbrook, even at that ownership right now, getting shares, if not more. So you think about this offense, you have Leonard Fournette in the backfield, nobody behind him. You have Chris Conley, DJ Shark on the outsides. It's going to be interesting to see if Lee is healthy. But it's all going through Dede Westbrook. He ran 90% of his routes out of the slot last year. Nick Foles enjoys throwing to slot wide receivers. Nelson Aguilar was only viable last year, never been viable in his career with Carson Wentz. Became viable with Nick Foles last year. And then you have Dede, who's actually somewhat of a very good to elite route runner in the slot, underrated if anything. But the biggest piece of this that I find is you have a good total. They're slight underdogs, so they should be, through all times of this game, throwing the ball. But also his matchup against Fuller individually in the slot might be, in terms of slot wide receivers, if not the best, it's like top 3 for the league. Kendall Fuller last year in the slot was absolutely just terrible. He was an open gate. So you have a good wide receiver whose quarterback at least has shown early trust in him and likes to throw the slot in general. I don't think Foles, I had a lot more interest earlier in the week, but I don't think outside of Dede and Fournette, I'm going to be getting to much of that offense. But yeah, I rank it for that offense right now, Fournette then Dede, but that's not any slight to Westbrook. The matchup's too good, and I think he's going to have enough targets at that price point.
38 DraftKings fantasy points per game Kansas City gave up last year, and 30 on Fanduel. So it is a premier matchup for wide receivers when facing this Kansas City Chiefs defense. And I mean, I think you said it best. Someone's got to catch the ball, and Nick Foles has to throw it to someone. And I think Dede Westbrook is the only valuable option at this point for someone to get all those targets. So I'm on board with that. And I think it's fair to say that being at that respective ownership or with the field on that, there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. Another guy that's a wide out that I kind of want to talk about real quick is someone who's been kind of talked about here this whole week. Criminally priced at 4,200. I'm pretty sure you know where I'm going with this. Curtis Samuel, Carolina at home against the Rams. Is Samuel priced criminally? Where do you stand on Samuel? He's 18% projected right now. And are you paying for this price point of Curtis Samuel?
Yeah, like so many guys in the slate since these prices came out and they're static like 2 months ago. 4,200 is way too cheap for a guy who the second half of last year, you had DJ Moore, who was hyped up last year as his number one receiver. Second half of last year, DJ Moore had 43 targets, Samuel had 42. So he started to slowly emerge as a realistic weapon for Cam Newton. Now this preseason, all the hype comes out about him. He's taking over as the de facto number one. He's probably the more versatile and electric wide receiver, which makes him really good in terms of he had a high ADOT last year. GPP plays. I think 4,200 is clearly too cheap. The ownership that he's at right now, it's coming in lower than Dede, and he's probably a bigger upside player. Dede going to rely a lot more on volume, which is fine for DK PPR format. But yeah, Curtis Samuel GPPs, it's completely fine. And you can eat chalk. I would rather eat chalk at the running back position because those are guaranteed touches for the most part, lower ADOT, just in terms of the receptions for pass catching running backs. You can eat chalk in multiple spots in a tournament. You just have to get different 1 or 2 spots. I'm a little bit hesitant on Samuel actually in cash. I know that he's probably going to be a popular option due to the price point, but this was a guy who was very high in terms of ADOT. He is versatile in the middle of the field as well, or just the intermediate range. But when you think of high ADOT guys like Deshaun Jackson and players like that, you probably don't want to be getting to them in cash. So I think he's fine because of the price point. He's getting a lot of hype, but he's still strictly right now a GPP play for me. And I'm fine getting there at that ownership. I probably come in somewhere right around where it is right now.
Any love for the other side in Moore rather than going with Samuel or going with both?
Yeah, if you're going to like game stack this side of it, it seems pretty hard not to want to get to McCaffrey in that situation if they're going to be having a great game. It seems like McCaffrey would be doing well as well as a correlation with the PPR format, pass catching running back. But I have more interest in Samuel there just due to pricing in the 5,500 range. Once you start getting to DJ Moore in that range, it's definitely contrarian. But at the same time, I think there's just other options that are cheaper or more expensive. It's kind of a no man's range. If I get to 5,500, I'd rather just go towards the chalk of really not coming in as highly right now, a Chris Godwin range, even maybe a Tyler Boyd, who won't be as efficient, but will have a ton of volume to work with.
Chris Godwin, I'm glad you brought him up because, there's obviously been a lot of talk about Godwin and all the upside, especially going into this matchup against the 49ers and Godwin being owned higher than Evans. Godwin's dropped, as has the Buccaneers throughout the week as far as ownership is concerned. Godwin right now is at 12%. He's 6,200 on DraftKings. And then you go down a little bit further, you got Mike Evans. He's flirting around 10% right now at 7,900. But let's talk about Godwin real quick. 6,200, 12% ownership. Is this someone who we can play in cash? And also, is this someone that we could pay that price point for in tournaments?
Yeah, in both formats, he's fantastic. I looked at the updated ownership and I was like shocked. I want to see what it finally comes in at. It seems like with now all this other coverage on different players this week, the preseason hype's worn off a little bit, but it's still evident that he was on the field for every single one of Jameis Winston's dropbacks. Arians said he'll be on the field for 100% of the plays. He was, at least in the preseason. He was in the slot on more than 2/3 of those, which is just the ultimate spot for a talented wide receiver to be in. Better matchup, can use more of the field. I'm not getting away from Godwin. The only way I would is if you saw him, which I thought might be the case before these ownership numbers came out originally, be one of the highest owned players on the slate overall, even higher than the running backs. But right now, it's just a spot where, I'm going to be levels over the field. I don't play 150 maxes, but I do play.
Tampa Bay, 39 point. Sorry, you cut out for a second. So I went into something I wanted to mention about San Fran, that they give up 39.7. It's interesting just seeing the significant drop in ownership for the Bucs, which makes me want to now consider this a leverage play if it continues to drop. I see people are just going to attack in other places, specifically Minnesota. Jacksonville is getting a lot of ownership now, and Carolina is one of the highest teams that seems to be getting most of the ownership as far as the team is concerned. So if Buccaneers keep dropping, I feel as if that this Winston wide receiver correlation, I mean, we can even talk about O.J. Howard now in this sense because San Francisco has struggled with tight ends as well. This could be a really good leverage play in a sense compared to ownership as that I thought on Monday when I thought that Tampa Bay was going to be just the complete chalk, and now it doesn't even seem to be the case.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. You have just Evans, who's been just criminally too low all week, just due to Godwin kind of driving that down a little bit on the same team. But yeah, if you're going to be stacking this game, which if you're playing GPPs, you probably should focus on that. It seems to be the fastest paced game on the slate, if not the fastest, probably top two with Carolina and the Rams. You're going to see the most plays here. You have a good total. You have defenses that were both bottom 10 in DVOA against the pass last year. Very much going to become a shootout with no running backs in that backfield. And the only running back that might become viable is Dar Ogunbowale, who they say is going to be a third down pass catching back. So even better for Winston overall if you're playing the stack there. So yeah, I think Godwin's fine in both formats. Evans is fine in both formats. And when you just think about the ownership, it starts to become an even stronger, like you're saying, just GPP play. I thought this was going to be the most stacked team. It just seems that right now people are going just elsewhere. And like Manny was saying yesterday, a lot of people just don't stack in general, let alone full game stack, running it back on the opposite side. So yeah, this is a spot that coming later today and tomorrow when I start actually getting into crunching these 20 max lineups, I'm going to have to kind of really set some rules and focus on that a lot and make sure I get what I want there.
I love how you mentioned the game flow. Because this game could definitely be a shootout, and it could be a shootout from a passing perspective. Right now, the pace of the game is ranked second highest right now for this week. Yeah. And one thing to point out is the fact that, which I feel could be a great play, is Matt Breda. He's more of a pass catching back, and they do have Coleman as well. However, Coleman weighs 20 more pounds than Breda. He will be someone who can be at the goal line, who probably will see a majority and bulk of the goal line carries. However, though, when it comes to a game flow perspective, Breda will be more in a passing flow rather than a ground and pound type of situation. So for this type of game flow, I feel like Breda will be on the field much more than anticipated, which could lead to a really solid game. And at 4K at the running back position, could be someone that you could fit into some sneaky lineups for tournament or GBP sake, especially if you're multi-entering. So be on the lookout for Matt Breda in this matchup. I feel could be someone who is now starting to get some ownership. He actually, I just checked, he just creeped up. He's now 9%. So people are starting to look at Breda and maybe look at this game from the San Francisco side a little bit more, which could be an interesting game stack type of situation.
Yeah.
I want to talk about one thing real quick that is kind of a tough position, and it's the tight end position. It's a position where you can either pay up for 1, 2, maybe 3 guys, and know that you're going to get some sort of production, or you can flirt around and go to the bottom tier. And the bottom tier, someone who's really standing out this week, that's getting a lot of buzz, that's getting a lot of ownership. He's the highest projected tight end, is Hunter Henry for the Chargers at home against the Colts this week. He's 3,900 on DraftKings. Give us your take and give us your kind of mindset on going and rolling with the chalk Hunter Henry this week.
Yeah, when I take into account just kind of like point per dollar and what the rest of my lineup construction is looking like primarily, Hunter Henry becomes a guy who I'm going to be over the field on the ownership. I think it's fine where it is. I'm coming in over it. He's a guy who's going up against the Colts, who gave up the most yards to the tight end position last year. And then just factoring into that, he's removed from an injury, so that's where the risk comes in. But everything out of camp this preseason says that he looks fine. Overall, just dating back to when he was actually in the league, was top 5 in a lot of advanced stats with Phillip Rivers. Now there's no Antonio Gates there. Overall, your matchup is against a team that funnels it, and exactly why they were last in the league to the tight end. They funnel to short passes, to running backs, to slot receivers, to tight ends, probably primarily more so than not. The offensive line right now for the Chargers is a bit of mess, so you're going to have to get the ball out, you would imagine, way more than average, quicker for Phillip Rivers, which is going to hurt guys like Mike Williams on the outside. So, yeah, middle of the field is where they're going to be looking a lot. Short passes, that's exactly what the Colts are scheming for. Nothing changes on defense for them during the offseason. So, yeah, Hunter Henry is a guy at that price point that's hard to ignore. If you have the salary, if you're doing a game stack and Kittle and Kelsey are in your lineup, yeah, don't just get away from it. But Hunter Henry right now, all things considered, is probably my favorite tight end of the week.
Hunter Henry, great price. I think you made a great point. The Colts struggled severely last year against the tight end position. I think Phillip Rivers is going to be happy to have a tight end who can catch the ball and also who is healthy now. So that is something where we'll be seeing maybe Hunter Henry in one of those millionaire maker winning entries this week. You guys, we're almost halfway through with the show. Don't forget, use the sign-up code NFL Strategy to get 50% off your first month of Awesemo Plus. All you got to do is go to osmo.com/join and check out our new landing page. It's got a lot of videos. This describes each package, kind of breaks it down so you know what you're actually getting before you buy it. Get access to all the tools developed and used by the man himself, Alex Baker, a.k.a. Osmo, the #1 ranked DFS player in the world. You guys, we got Sal Vitri here. We've been breaking down the slate and ownership for the last half hour. For the next couple minutes, I want to talk about stacks and game stack. And you just mentioned a couple minutes ago, you said that a lot of people don't stack and let alone game stack. And speaking of stacks, I want to know kind of what's on your mind this week as far as any teams that you're looking to stack that you think are optimal stacking plays for this week.
Yeah, so I mean, we just talked about the Bucs, and I thought they were going to come in at just crazy ownership numbers, which still probably wouldn't have impacted my interest in stacking them, just because there's not enough people, one, stacking like Manny was saying in terms of percentages each week, a quarterback and a wide receiver, let alone running it back or even knowing to do that for correlation purposes on the other end. So the Bucs come in as a stack that makes sense to me. You're going to get a favorable priced Chris Godwin there that makes it easier. Evans is a little bit more expensive, but the Bucs for sure. And in a game stack there, it makes it very easy to kind of have Kittle on the opposite end of that if you're not going to be getting to O.J. Howard. But in terms of just different stacks that stand out a little bit right now for me, a couple of them. The first one is probably the Rams. The Rams are a team that is in a fantastic situation. We talked about pace a little bit earlier about the Bucs being the second highest pace implied right now. The Rams, if you go to last year's numbers, and their offense isn't going to change really that much. Carolina's, if anything, wants to play faster. This would be the fastest paced game using Football Outsiders pace metrics from last season. You get the Rams, who, in my opinion, are all going to be coming in relatively, if not all of them, very low owned, because just nothing's being said about them in the media. That's what drives ownership. They lost the last time you saw them. They looked terrible in the Super Bowl. They did not play at all in the preseason, any of these starters. And the only news you're hearing is that Todd Gurley's knee, don't draft him in season-long leagues. So right now, the Rams, the best offense right behind the Chiefs last year in terms of just upside and amount of plays being run. Like, that is a spot where they're going to come in all criminally on their own against the defense that in some spots is strong, but overall it's not scary. Sean McVay, a brilliant head coach as always, and it just seems like everybody forgot about that. And they're garnering no ownership, and there's situations within that game that I like specifically for players. But the stack itself seems so high upside for the ownership coming in on it. That's a spot I like paired with the Bucs. Those are probably the two I'm looking at the most right now. And then just another one to kind of point out is Jacksonville. I do have interest there. Leonard Fournette is probably going to be somebody who gets into a stack, which usually might not sound right, but it seems like they want to make an effort just from all the talk, 3 targets in the first preseason game. They want to make an effort to get the ball in his hands in the passing game more. So if you stack that with a Dede and a Nick Foles, the only issue there is I don't know how good of a quarterback Nick Foles actually is outside of a very good Super Bowl run. Last year didn't look that great.
I want to ask you about the other high-paced game with the LA Rams in Carolina and Todd Gurley, which this guy, you know, obviously a fantastic running back. I mean, the guy can do it all. We know the talent is there, but there's just been these situations as of late where Sean McVay the other day saying that they're going to run 3 running backs in game 1 and try things out. Another take is, you know, if it's late in the game and they have a lead, they're going to give the ball off to someone else to avoid bruising and him getting banged up. And then I point out a stat in my article about how much the LA Rams throw the ball inside the 20 and specifically inside the 10. I think Jared Goff was the highest passing attempts in the NFL last season inside the 10, which obviously, as we know, that takes away significantly away from the running back position when it comes to touchdowns and scoring at the goal line. And, you know, obviously this week, we don't know what to expect, but it's looking like he could be a leverage play because there's not many people on him. But I want to get your insight and see what you think about Todd Gurley this week. Is he a play? Is he a fade? Or is he someone who –
Yeah, so Gurley right now for this week is probably my biggest leverage for tournaments. I don't know what it's going to come in yet before I crunch this, but the way that I'm setting it up with the other value running backs, I'm honestly not shocked if I get more Todd Gurley than Dalvin Cook. And that's probably just one of the boldest takes that might be just heard right now from all the media attention on Cook. But, yeah, look, the reason you don't want Todd Gurley and the reason you're scared of him is season-long fantasy leagues. You don't want week 3, week 4, his knee to inflame, and now he's done for the year. He's done for, or at least limited for the year, done for a month, whatever it might be. But he's the most healthy that he'll be all year long right now, week 1. Just yesterday, the media asked McVay, what's the snap count? What's the play limit on Todd Gurley? He said there is none. He's getting 80 to 85+% of the workload like he normally has. If anything, the passing attempts inside the 10, like you were saying, inside the red zone, second most inside the 10, the most for Jared Goff. Anything there would actually give me more interest in Gurley, a guy who was actually catching the ball very well before some of these knee issues came around. He's 7,900. If there is no concerns around the knee, he should be $9,000. Darrell Henderson Jr. had all the hype in the world when the initial pricing was out, so I think that actually helped the price come down on Gurley. Now that hype has kind of gone away as he's faded to the number 2, if not number 3, behind Malcolm Brown. I'm taking this as if Todd Gurley is going to be Todd Gurley from last year, at least for week 1. If he gets injured this week and that just screws me over, well, that's fine. It's very hard to predict when that would come, if at all. So I'm looking at this as he was a top 3, if not the best last year at one point, being jammed into every lineup. Mid-season, Todd Gurley running back, and you're getting him at 7,900, and he's fully healthy, at least right now from all the indications that we're getting. He's going to be as healthy as he ever will be for this season. So I'm very high on Todd Gurley. I understand why people are down on him. The price point's a weird range, but I'm going to come in just levels above the field, and it should be very easy too.
I'm right there with you. Just like I spoke of Ezekiel Elliott earlier, I'm the type of person that will pay up for talent when other people aren't paying for that same talent. And that leverage alone allows you to really separate yourself and differentiate yourself in GBP tournaments, especially when ownership is so low. So just like Zeke, Gurley, who I believe, I don't know what to expect. And I did write up this week that maybe he is someone that we can fade. But now looking at all the things moving forward, it could be a leverage play. And also it couldn't be. I mean, who knows what to expect. In this game, though, too, we have wide receivers and a ton of weapons on this Los Angeles Rams side. And someone in the premium Slack chat, and for those of you who don't have Osmo Plus, we have a premium Slack chat where we're all in there talking 24 hours a day. They're talking about Robert Woods, and someone wanted your take and your insight on, is Robert Woods a great play this week, or where do you stand on Robert Woods?
So that's actually a good question for the receivers here. All of them, when Kupp was healthy last year, all floated in the low to mid-20s in terms of target share. Kupp kind of broke free as the guy who was getting a lot of the production, and there's a big reason why. He was in the slot. Robert Woods, out of those 3 receivers, is the one I have the least interest in, believe it or not. He was a very stable cash play last year, even better when Kupp got injured. But Kupp's going to move back into the slot. That's going to force Woods to go to the outside, where he'll probably face Bradbury, who is not in terms of an elite cornerback, but the best on that team. You're going to get Kupp, who was productive last year in the slot. So I have interest in Kupp. And then on the other end, Brandon Cooks is going up against probably his own defense on that end. He shreds zone defenses the last 2 years. He's the definition of a GPP play, but he also has intermediate route running abilities. So it's not like I hate Robert Woods. There's just so many places to go. And when you break down matchups, when you break down the usage that they'll have, Kupp being in the slot, huge, Cooks against his own defense, those guys I like more in terms of game stacking when I'm talking about this than Woods. I'm going to be getting to, as of right now, it's number 2 behind the Bucs for game stacks, the way that I did a very initial crunch earlier today. That's going to definitely change. But Woods I'm getting the lowest of, and I'm happy with that.
I agree. I think Wood, the way I would rank it is I would go Woods, Cooks, and then Kupp. I don't know what to expect from Kupp right now. I mean, this is incredible to come back from an ACL and be ready to rip. They're saying that he's faster, saying that he's running better routes now. It's just incredible, the recovery that athletes have nowadays and the technology that they have to go along with it is just absolutely outstanding. There's a running back that, definitely been talked about. In fact, this team has been talked about. We haven't even talked about them yet, and we're 42 minutes in, and which I'm surprised because the Cleveland Browns, probably America's hype team right now, at home this week against Tennessee. They're a big favorite. A lot of talk about this offense. And we got Nick Chubb, 6,400, 16% projected ownership right now on Draftkings. Let's talk about this Cleveland Browns offense real quick. And where'd you take Chubb?
Yeah, so overall, just for the Browns, I don't have much interest in terms of just game stacking it. The total is actually nice, and it's surprising that it's nice because this should kind of shape up to be a very slow-paced game. The Browns should increase their pace this year without a doubt, but they were already doing that last year. A lot of the pace coming down is from just overall the Tennessee side, and it's just going to be disgusting on that side of it. Nick Chubb is the one that I have the most interest in this game, another guy who's sort of a pivot away from, if you will, a Dalvin Cook. So nothing standing out too much. He's going to be a 3-down back with pass catching work, as pretty much every single guy in this kind of 6,500 to 6,000 or 5,700 to Carson range. All the values right there. Chubb's another one. Some other guys stand out because of their matchups, but he should have just as much volume. Odell is somebody who I have interest in as well. Those are the two pieces of this game, at least from the Brown side, and really just the overall game because just Tennessee looks terrible. But it's going to be Chubb and Odell. Odell's matchup against Adore Jackson, or if he drives and gets Malcolm Butler. Either way, it's going to be those two guys gave up the most top 10 in yards to the wide receiver last year. So I like the matchup for Odell. I actually like Rashad Higgins, very small amount for a GPP, just dart throw if you're going to stack this game and not have Chubb for some reason, or Odell. Higgins on the other side would get the other cornerback, while Landry would be in the slot against the biggest and probably best cornerback in Logan. And I don't really have much interest in Landry just in general. So mainly Odell and Nick Chubb. But in terms of game stacking, I don't have interest in game stacking. I don't have interest in team stacking, if you will, with Baker.
One play that I like is the tight end for Cleveland this week, David Njoku. Tennessee struggled heavily last year with the with the tight end position. And also on the same side, the same position, I really like Delanie Walker. And I think you talked about him earlier this week. I feel like Delanie Walker is someone at the tight end position that is, a little bit fairly priced across the sites that has upside. Cleveland last year gave up 15.3 DraftKings fantasy points per game to the tight end. So David Njoku, I feel like that correlation with maybe a Baker stack could be a little bit of upside too. I really like Baker Mayfield this year. Baker, when Freddie Kitchen took over in the last 8 games, he increased his yards per game, 35 yards or 35 or 40 yards. I think he went from like 245 to 280 yards per game. And, there's just a lot of upside here, I think. And who knows, the ownership isn't there for Baker Mayfield right now. So I think that's why I'm also kind of leaning towards it. But another talk about a quarterback that I wanted to ask you about is Carson Wentz. He's 5,700 on DraftKings. And this offense, they're heavy favorites. So the offense has to come from somewhere. The running backs, I'm not sure about, and we can touch on if you want. We could talk about Howard and Samuels and really this huge running back by committee that they have because it's pretty large. But Carson Wentz at the quarterback position, because I think we need to talk about maybe some quarterbacks here that are a little bit cheaper in price but have upside. Is Carson Wentz one of those guys?
Yeah, without a doubt he is. Just in regards to the 12-game slate, he's top 5 on the slate in terms of last year. His pass attempts per game obviously cut short, but still he had 36.5 attempts per game last year. What they did in the backfield is, if anything, that should encourage you more for Carson Wentz because there's all guys who are capable of catching the ball. You have Sproles, Clement, Miles Sanders out of Penn State can catch the ball. And then Jordan Howard, probably the one who can catch it the least, but still able to. And I imagine he wouldn't be on the field in those situations anyways. So Wentz himself, cash is fine. Tournaments is fine. Overall, a really good spot. Like you said, the points have to come from somewhere, and there's a ton of points in this game. The challenge for people who want to game stack this is, and if you're entering a ton of lineups, 150, 20, 50, whatever it is, it'll be easier to get exposure to a lot of Eagles weapons. The challenge is just which weapons do you choose from when there's going to be 12 personnel a lot, so 2 tight ends are in play. You have just 3 receivers that can be in play, running back. So Wentz himself is a great play, just if you're wanting to stack this game, especially for GPPs, wanting to stack your quarterback with a wide receiver. It gets a little bit more challenging, but like you said, points will come from everywhere. It seems like a good overall spot for the offense.
Yeah, is this a spot where we can run Carson Wentz naked?
So overall, I would say no, just because there's so many points here. They're going to come from somewhere. So if you're entering 1 to 3 lineups, I probably just stack another game. If you're entering a lot, just get lower exposures or just have some guys higher exposed if you want Ertz, although Landon Collins does well against him, but still he's going to get a lot of volume, especially around the red zone. You have Djax out there. I would probably lower exposure to Aguilar. Never has had success with Wentz. And then Jeffrey on the other side of that. So those are guys, really just Jeffrey, Ertz, and Djax that I would have exposure to. Picking 2 of them. I wouldn't run Wentz naked, especially with the injuries. He's going to be less mobile. And if I'm going to have somebody naked in a stack or naked in a lineup, it would probably be
Sorry, you faded out. So that's my mistake. I don't know what happened. I want to ask you something because people sometimes run naked quarterbacks. And obviously this is not an optimal play because if your quarterback is throwing a touchdown, it's more then sure that someone else has that quarterback, but also has the wide receiver, the tight end, or someone who's catching that touchdown. Is running a naked quarterback an optimal play by any means when it comes to daily fantasy?
Yeah, it would be. And yeah, I'm not sure what's up. The Wi-Fi seems good, but I'm not sure what's up on my end. I apologize for that.
No,
Yeah.
no, I think it might be my end. So I don't know. It comes in, it faded out, and I couldn't hear you, so I got nervous.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So in terms of daily fantasy, yeah, I'm fine running it naked. I won't do it as much, obviously, as I won't. But you see guys like Josh Allen last year knocking down tournaments multiple times because he can throw the ball. But just last year, he was rushing for like 100 yards in some games. But there's just upside there on the ground for sure. So like Lamar Jackson stands out. Josh Allen, those are like the main ones that would stand out now that Cam Newton's going to be more of sort of like a pocket passer, at least they say. But Wentz in this situation wouldn't go naked. Just the injuries, if he had any mobility to begin with, I imagine it would be very much so just limited here. So I wouldn't run it here. But in general, yeah, it makes sense. And definitely just for week one, in terms of week one, Lamar Jackson would probably be the main spot I would go to.
I'm happy you brought up Lamar Jackson because I was just going to pivot to a game where we haven't talked about anyone yet, and that's Miami and Baltimore. This game is just looking nasty from a DFS perspective. Really no upside. I don't know if I'm getting anything from this game. Is there anything that we need to look at in this game outside of defenses that is worth rostering this week from this game?
So yeah, just Lamar Jackson. If you did want to get to him, he's fine for cash in my opinion because of the rushing upside. In tournaments, I won't get as much. He's still okay because he has that upside in the rushing game, and also Miami is very bad against just overall running QBs, but rushing in general. So he's gonna have a lot of time to do whatever he wants if he's going to break free and just run around out there. So Jackson, but yeah, last year once he kind of took over as the quarterback for Joe Flacco, all of his wide receivers were, if not outside the top 100. In terms of their overall production, yardage, they were all pushing in the high 90s. So there's no upside there. Mark Andrews became sort of a sexy play for season longs. People still talking about him. He's not on the field enough for me. Never eclipsed 55% of the snaps last year. So it's really just Lamar Jackson. Mark Ingram, he's going to have enough volume. These guys ran 70 plays per game last year, mainly because they ran so much efficiently or enough to get first downs. So Mark Ingram's okay as a fringe, not for cash for me just because of the passing upside there, but as a fringe tournament play right now, kind of borderline. Opposite end, Albert Wilson would be the only thing I have interest in GPPs, but not a ton of it.
Miami struggled against the running back position last year. They gave up 28.7 Draftkings fantasy points per game. Baltimore now is going to be facing a defense that has even gotten worse over the last couple of weeks. So Mark Ingram definitely is in play for me. Could have some upside there. But I mean, outside of that, maybe a Lamar Jackson. I'm just not getting to this game. And I just don't see this game benefiting me one bit in my lineups. Another team that we haven't said one thing about yet, Kansas City Chiefs at Jacksonville. This line is fairly close. I don't know why, but they're only 3.5-point favorites right now. People are saying this could be a shootout. Where's your stand on it? What do you take from this game? And are you rostering Mahomes or any of these Chiefs?
Yeah, this is the easiest week of the entire season probably to get to Patrick Mahomes. He's at the price point he was last year when he was just doing his thing every single week, 7K, 71, 7,200. It's as easy as ever to get to him. He did struggle against Jacksonville last year in this same spot in terms of where they're playing. He had 2 interceptions. He was a middle of the pack quarterback finisher for that week. I think it was like quarterback 15 or something. But overall, he's just a huge talent. Highest total or tied with the highest, if not second highest now due to the Eagles rising. Total on the slate. I have a lot of interest in Mahomes just because he's so easy to get to. But in terms of game stacking it, if anything, the other game stacks I already talked about hinted at Jacksonville. I probably game stack and run it back with a Kelsey and stack the Jacksonville team more so. So I like Mahomes. I like Kelsey a lot. No Telvin Smith for Jacksonville. And that's the only guy who could really limit Kelsey, in my opinion. And he didn't do it last year. But Tyreek for GPPs is always fine. He might, I don't know what his ownership is. If he's coming in at low ownership, there's leverage with Tyreek as always. But Jacksonville was probably the smartest team in how they defended him last year. You put a very good cornerback in Jalen Ramsey on him. That alone would limit him. You put safety help over the top. And then if they're ever just in terms of if you ever have a 2-man safety, they had triple coverage on him for probably about a third of that game. They put a safety shadow him over the top, and they would drive another safety to the middle of the field, mainly as extra security. So a lot of attention, which is why Travis Kelce had upside, which also will give Sammy Watkins upside. So I'm going to be very low on Hill, and I think just the public probably will be relative to other weeks. He always has that boomer bust upside for GPPs, but Right now, it's just Mahomes and Kelsey, a little bit of Sammy Watkins, but I'm not too much. I'm not there, which is surprising for a Chiefs offense, which might be the wrong mistake here. I'm not there as much in game stacks right now.
Last year, Mahomes threw for 313, no touchdowns against the Jaguars. Kelsey went off for 500. Blake Bortles surprisingly threw for 430 yards. So interesting game. Could definitely see some shootout potential here. Sal, I want to ask you, when it comes to this week, obviously you always have a certain amount of plays that you really like, that you dislike, some locks and maybe some fades. Give us some of your locks this week that you feel like is a must play for you for week one.
Yeah, so for week one, I guess I'll go with the running back position, Leonard Fournette. In all formats, I like Leonard Fournette, especially because the ownership isn't there that much. He's just not going to come off the field. And in a spot where he's not a huge underdog and kind of having sort of a lock or a play that I really like, again, I have to see where the lineups shake out, but that's where I would imagine being a slight underdog is worrisome, but there's been a ton of talk of him getting into the pass catching game more. And also, the guy secluded himself to an island that is undisclosed right now for a month just to work harder. He says he's in better shape than he was coming out of college. So he's never efficient in terms of his yards per carry, his success rate. But overall, if he's going to get all the volume, you throw into the fact that the goal line work, you also throw in that he's going to catch. Maybe I have him right now for 5.5 targets for this game. So there's upside there. It's probably Leonard Fournette at that price point for just cash and GPPs. I really like him a lot. I imagine he'll be the highest exposed. I'm not sure where the cash lineup stands right now, but I have a lot of interest in Fournette.
And then what about fades? Give us some fades that you have. And you guys in the YouTube chat or in Slack, go ahead and put your questions out there. Ask any questions right now so Sal can go ahead and answer them. Let's go ahead and get those in there. But Sal, fades. Give us about 2 or 3 fades this week that you're going to go ahead and avoid rostering.
Yeah, so for me, Austin Eckler, he had higher ownership earlier in the week. It's come down, so I'm less aggressive on it, but I'm still coming in under the field. I don't really have just much interest in general in Eckler this week. He's not priced as if he was going to be sort of he's priced up pretty much because Melvin Gordon, this news was already out by the time the salaries came in. He's already been a versatile back, so 5,500 isn't like a very cheap price tag on a guy who might only see 60% of the touches this week, 60% of the snaps in the backfield with Justin Jackson there. It's a very good matchup. Like, Indianapolis is going to allow you to throw it to the running back. The Chargers' offensive line, though, is terrible. So in terms of on the ground, there's not going to be too much room for success rate there. So Austin Eckler as a running back is somebody that I'm probably getting away from. And I guess we hinted on it earlier. And either of these guys I'm not full fading, although Eckler, if I'm only entering like 3 maxes, probably doesn't make the cut. And some of those 20 maxes, very one lineup at most probably. I just don't have upside there with the workload relative to other players in that range. Dalvin Cook is somebody who's clearly, when I say fade, not a clear fade, but if he's going to come in somewhere around 35, 40% owned, I would probably have 20% or less, so half the field or closer to maybe a third of the field. So those would be the main 2 guys. Wide receiver, just nothing stands out right now to, at least for me, as I'm looking at the ownership, to really want to fade. I guess Curtis Samuel, in terms of cash, he's not really a cash option for me in tournaments. It's fine. But outside of that, nothing's really popping at the wide receiver position. Adam Thielen, if Stephon Diggs doesn't play, is great. If Stephon Diggs plays limited, I don't have much interest there. Thielen's going to be moving to the outside with Chad Beatty, kind of the primary slot receiver now. He'll still be in the slot for some of the game, Thielen. Much higher success rate overall for him in the slot for productivity. The price point's too good, though, in terms of fading it. But if Diggs plays, just be aware that he's not going to be, that if Diggs plays, just be aware that Thielen's not going to be as heavily utilized in the slot where he was really making his due and having just a career year last year.
That's a great point. And if Diggs is out, any love for the rekindling relationship of Doxson and Cousins?
No, I'm probably not going to have any love on that end of it right now. But watch out, maybe not this week, but if Diggs is out, there should be more usage for Irv Smith Jr. I don't think you can play it this week. He's a tight end, very versatile. They want to use him as a wide receiver, and he had a lot of success in camp in the preseason. But really, if Diggs is out, then yeah, I have a ton more interest in Thielen because he'd probably move into the slot even more and just get more utilization in terms of production, snaps for sure. It'll go through the roof. At that price point, it's really hard to ignore if there's no Diggs.
One fade that I'm fading this week, I wrote him up, is Julio Jones. He's projected to be highly owned at the wide receiver position. Obviously, a lot of talent there, but he's got a really tough matchup against they played previously. He shut him down. But I also feel like this is a matchup where they'll have a game plan to shut down Jones, and I feel like that opens up the field for Sanu. and also maybe some love to Devontae Freeman. So Julio Jones is probably my top fade of the week. I just don't want to pay up for a receiver that I know that doesn't have the best of matchups, and other people are on him as well. So outside of that, in the chat, as we go ahead and start closing this out here, I'm just seeing some talks and some players that people are throwing out. And one name that just came across, which we haven't talked about, and I'm a huge Jets fan, is Le'Veon Bell. I mean, this guy is saying that he can take on whatever workload. We don't really know what kind of scheme they're going to have drawn up. It's interesting because I'm loving the fact that he's a Jet. I don't know how they're going to run this offense. I'm just scared because of Adam Gase. It's just the worst situation for this potential of a running back. But how do you feel about Le'Veon Bell and going against the field as far as there's no ownership there? Could we roster Le'Veon Bell? Is this a talent that we could pay for?
I'm not going to be doing it. I think that he's in that range that there's just no ownership on. It's in a very brutal spot overall. Like, it probably couldn't – not playing football for like 20 months and then coming back against the Bills in this defense is probably not the greatest. Overall, the pace won't be high. But then they said the 15 to 20 touches or whatever they said they're going to try and limit him to. One, I'm not too sure I'd buy that if he looks fine. Two, that's also a lot of touches still. Like 20 touches is still fine. But 7,100 in that range, I'd rather get different by just playing Todd Gurley or playing Todd Gurley than Le'Veon Bell. It's just overall better pace, better matchup. So I don't have interest in Bell this week. I have to see. It's a wait and see there for me if this offense is actually going to play faster. Probably be tough against Buffalo in their first couple of weeks with a tougher schedule. But I actually have a lot of upside or a lot of just stock in season-long leagues in some of these Jets in deeper leagues. And I think the offense is going to be much improved. Just this week, I'm not going to be targeting against Buffalo, and I'm not going to be touching Le'Veon Bell. Probably won't make any 20-max lineups.
Hey, guys. Breaking news. Antonio Brown has been released.
Whoa.
Oh, man. Let's go. I hope he goes to the Jets. That's incredible. People in the chat are saying the Patriots, man.
That's what a lot of my friends in groups are saying. But, yeah, that I saw Julio, they said, should be done, his contract. I saw something about that come on my phone.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that was another thing, is just that that back and forth with Julio too. And I mean, like I said, people in the chat are saying that Xavier Rhodes wasn't elite last year, but I mean, he's still essentially, based on his position and based on what he's done, he's still, from the articles that I've seen, he's still a top 10 corner. So I don't know. I mean, you can pay up for Julio. There's no saying that you can't. It's just it's not an area that I want to pay up for. I'm really big on paying up for Zeke Elliott this week. I have this feeling that if their ownership isn't there, I want to make sure I go ahead and take care of that leverage play. But guys, outside of this, Sal, we have almost 24 hours now till week 1. So guys, work on these rosters. Not much time left. If you don't have Awesemo Plus membership, one last time, the code's NFL Strategy, guys. Get 50% off your first month. Okay, we have the Slack chat. We have the ownership, the projections, Fantasy Cruncher. We have Sal here, who's on a bunch of shows now every single week. You guys can tune in, work with us. We're in there, ask us questions. So don't forget NFL Strategy. Get 50% off your first month, Awesemo Plus. Sal, before we close out, where can everyone find you on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at SalVetri, DFS. I also have a YouTube channel. It's just my name. So really, any platform, if you type in my name, I mainly am just on YouTube here, my channel, and then on Twitter at SalVetri DFS. That's pretty much it.
All right. And guys, for me, you can find me at Chris Randone on Twitter. Also could check out my articles and videos every week on awesemo.com. You guys, week 1, tomorrow, get excited, get your lineups in. We wish you the best. Hopefully someone takes down this millionaire maker if it's not me or Sal. And we'll see you guys next week. Take care.
See you guys.